Hey everyone, welcome back to Wicked Deeds. We're your hosts. I'm Brittany.
And I'm John.
And today we'll be discussing a case where a young woman with a seemingly happy life vanished after a quick trip to her sister's. Investigators would go on to use every resource at their disposal to try and locate her, but even with countless tips and leads being brought forward, they'd find themselves coming up empty-handed time and time again. But now, after decades of frustration, new information has finally come to light. And the twists and turns that have taken place over the past few years will truly leave you stunned. Today's case is about the disappearance of Tracy Kroh. On Saturday, August 5th, 1989, around 6 p.m., 17-year-old Tracy Kroh headed out of her parents' house in Enterline, Pennsylvania, to drop off a barbecue grill and some coupons to her sister Tammy, who lived with her husband about 8 miles north, at the Alex Acres trailer park off of Route 147 in Halifax, Pennsylvania. The drive should have only taken Tracy about 12 minutes. It seems as though, just based on early reporting on the case, Tracy also planned to visit Millersburg Square, but it's unclear exactly when or why she planned to go there, but we'll dive into that aspect of the case a bit more later. So later on that night, around 2 a.m., when Ellen Kroh, Tracy's mother, awoke to find her daughter wasn't home, she wasn't overly concerned. Tracy often spent the night at her sister's place, and Ellen just expected her daughter to be home the following day. But when Sunday, August 6th rolled around and the day drug on without any sign of Tracy, her parents became distressed over her absence. They discovered she hadn't actually spent the night at her sister's at all, but the grill and coupons were left on Tammy's porch, so she had to have been there at some point. Now, with this new information at their disposal, they knew something had to be up. So Tracy's father, Ivan, drove north into Dauphin County, Pennsylvania to drive around and see if he'd be able to find Tracy or really any sign of her. And that's when he found her car sitting in a parking space in front of Leopard's Five and Dime store in Millersburg Square. The 1971 Mercury Comet that was white with one blue stripe was sitting in the lot untouched, locked, and without Tracy's belongings inside. It seems as though wherever she went, she brought, at the very least, her purse with her. Either way, though, her parents were distressed by this and called police to report their daughter missing. Now, before we dive into the investigation into this case, I think you need to know a little bit more about Tracy before we can come to any sort of determination as to what may have happened to her. So, let's back up a bit. Tracy Kroh was born on April 16, 1972, to parents Ellen and Ivan. In 1989, when Tracy went missing, she was just 17 years old. She had two sisters, one that was older, Tammy, she was 20, as well as a younger sister, Kimberly, who was 12 at the time. Tracy lived with her parents and younger sister, Kimberly, in Enterline, Pennsylvania, which is described as a, quote, unincorporated community in Wayne Township, Dauphin County, Pennsylvania, end quote.
Did you say unincorporated?
Yeah.
Does that mean like super rural?
I think it's almost like a town within a town. Like if you look at certain towns where we live, it's like what you call it versus like what the main town actually is. Isn't there like a Wyoming, Rhode Island? But like that's not an actual town in Rhode Island. It's almost like a town within a town.
I guess.
I think it's kind of like that. And it's also Pennsylvania where they do this Wayne Township, Dauphin County thing, you know? Yeah, right. So I think it's like deep within that township, I guess.
Okay.
It's reported that Tracy had a very happy home life and was a normal teenager, except for the fact that she was insanely smart, like so smart she was third in her class at Halifax Area High School. She participated in multiple extracurricular activities, with her being the editor of the high school yearbook, an artist for the school newspaper, and a part of the Future Business Leaders of America. This girl wasn't messing around when it came to her studies. It's reported that she had plans to either attend business school after she graduated or planned to try and get a job where she could hone her skills. Even though she was described as shy and studious, she was still incredibly friendly and had a great sense of humor. When Tracy disappeared, she was described as 4 feet, 11 inches tall and between 80 and 90 pounds, so she was definitely a petite girl. She had light brown curly hair that appeared to be permed and sat just above her shoulders. She had green eyes and a small mole on her chin, which you can see in some of the photos of her on sites like the Charlie Project, but I will have a photo of her on our socials and our website as well. It's also been stated that Tracy had no enemies and was someone that you could always count on. Now, just based on everything I've told you already, you can probably assume that the first thought on this case is that there's literally no way Tracy would have left of her own accord. It just didn't make sense. She had a happy family life, seemingly no issues with anyone, and had big plans for her future. So, now, let's dive into the investigation to see what authorities have been able to uncover. For starters, the Millersburg Police Department, as well as the Pennsylvania State Police at Likens, would take over the investigation and seemed to take it pretty seriously from the start. Authorities, as well as the Kroh family, were searching all over the Millersburg and Halifax areas for her, as those were the 2 places she was last seen. It's later reported that Tracy was seen both at her sister's trailer in Halifax when she dropped off the grill and the coupons, along with another sighting of her in Millersburg Square. It's also reported that Tracy was last seen wearing a blue and white top and light blue shorts, as well as carrying her purse that may have had a horse or a unicorn on it, and was also carrying what's believed to be a keychain with Roger Rabbit on it. Now, it's a bit unclear on exactly what the time frame was regarding where she was last seen and when. I've seen 2 different, timelines reported. The first being that she left her parents' house around 6 p.m., which we already talked about, and she arrived to her sister's approximately 10 to 15 minutes later. She attempted to find her sister Tammy and let her know she was dropping off these items to her, but was unable to locate her. Come to find out, Tammy and her husband were actually out to dinner, and they didn't return home until around 6:30 p.m. to find the items left on the porch. So it's assumed that Tracy must have left them there and then headed off to her next destination. The other scenario that I've seen discussed, which I will say has been reported on this way far more recently, is the fact that Tracy didn't drop the items off to her sister's house until 10 p.m. But then that would mean that she was driving around for like 4+ hours with a grill in her car. So I just don't see that scenario being all that likely, but I did want to mention it because it has been reported quite a bit in recent years.
So she must have been seen by a neighbor or something?
Yeah, so she was seen by a neighbor dropping off the items. Like, that's how they confirmed that she did drop them off. But I don't know what time that sighting took place. And when the original reporting came out, it all said it was around 6:30. But then newer reporting says that it was around 10 p.m. So I don't know which is accurate, but I just like thinking about what makes more sense. Why would she leave, go wait in Millersburg Square to supposedly do whatever she was going to do, and then go to her sister's house at 10 o'clock?
Yeah, that seems
just doesn't
strange.
make sense, yeah.
And you said the sister was out to dinner?
Mm-hmm. And she got home, and that was reported on, and she was even interviewed for early articles saying that too.
What time did the sister get home?
6:30.
So if Tracy delivered those items at 10 o'clock, then her sister would have been home.
Yeah, that's exactly. So I'm like, why is that being perpetuated now? I don't know if it was like misconstrued at some point, and that's kind of what was just like reported on after the fact, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking, could she have been seen a second time in the trailer park around 10 o'clock?
Maybe.
Could it be, the last time she was seen at the trailer park, maybe?
Maybe, but we need to keep going. Okay. So, regardless of which timeline is more accurate, there are 2 sightings of her in both of these towns. So we know that she was at both places at some point on the night of August 5th, 1989. And when I say both places, I mean the sister's trailer and Millersburg Square. So because of this, this is where authorities and the family started in terms of their search for the missing girl. At the time, Tracy's father, Ivan, was working a maintenance job for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, and he'd taken some time off of work to spend his days searching. The Pottsville Republican reported what Ellen, Tracy's mother, said regarding the matter of searching for their missing daughter. She stated, quote, "He took a vacation week because he just couldn't work in the beginning. I stayed by the phones, but my husband and the rest of the family and friends were out beating the roads. They even went over across the river and checked the islands and just anywhere they could think of. Last Sunday, we went out and we were on a few roads we hadn't been on before, asking questions and showing her picture. But no luck. Nobody had seen her, end quote.
A question I had that I should have asked earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What is Millersburg Square? What's in it? Is it a shopping center? Is it a what?
So it's like a small downtown area. I guess there were like shops in there. There were like little antique places and food places. There was like a gazebo in there. So it kind of has almost like a sort of park-ish feel, but also like shopping center.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay. So if she was going to meet up with friends or someone around her age or whatever,
mm-hmm.
or if she just wanted to go spend some money, if she had money or whatever,
mm-hmm.
that would have been a spot for her to go to.
Yeah, definitely possible. She could do multiple things there. Now, something that Ellen mentioned in that statement was that she stayed home and manned the phones. And she went on to describe how frustrating that part of things was for her. She stated, quote, "The first couple of days, I was ready to scream because as soon as you'd hang up, it would ring. Everyone was calling. I figured if Tracy would have run away, I would have heard from her the first week. But now I really don't expect it to be her on the phone every time," end quote. And I feel like this is something we don't talk about very often. We always say like, oh, everyone was out searching for them. But if you think about it, in a missing persons case, you kind of have two things to consider. Either it could be an abduction with a ransom demand, or it could be the missing person calling to let their loved one know where they are. So I'm sure every time that phone rang and it's not what Ellen was hoping for, that had to have been pure agony.
Yeah, when you talk about a situation like this, I think of Teresa Corley's case, and I think of her mom being at home and like, you know, friends and family gathering at the house, and she's getting phone calls and stuff like that.
Yep. Because
like back then, there weren't cell phones at this time. So I could see the benefit of having somebody at home waiting for that phone call. And yeah, it must have been terrible every time somebody calls, either, you know, even if it's just a friend, you know, checking in.
Yeah.
Because what if there wasn't call waiting, and because you called me, now my daughter's not going to get through with the one call that she's able to make or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure all those type of thoughts were going through her mother's head.
Absolutely. So earlier on, before we dove into the initial timeline of events, we were talking about how Tracy certainly didn't seem like the type to have run off. And as authorities continued to look into the case and additional aspects of Tracy's life were reported on, that fact just became more solidified. It's reported that Tracy wore a special retainer at night that helped with a jaw condition she had, which had been described as being very painful, and that retainer was not taken with her. Her parents had stated that she absolutely would have brought it with her, even if she was just planning to stay the night at her sister's. And another thing that's discovered is that Tracy didn't take any money with her either. She'd left nearly $300 in her bedroom and an additional $400 in her bank account. Her mother told the Pottsville Republican, quote, "We had no problems at home. She had money upstairs, quite a bit of money. Her savings book is still there. She had maybe $8 allowance lying on the cupboard, all of which she would have taken with her," end quote. And I do also just want to mention that her sister had made a comment in the beginning, which I feel like could have been misconstrued, because I truly don't think Tammy believed that Tracy ran away. But she said something along the lines of Tracy going through some typical teenage stuff, like being worried about her senior year and that she had some boy troubles. But I think overall, the general consensus among the family was that Tracy would have never left, even though she may have been having these issues. These are normal things that happen to teenagers, and the vast majority don't run away from their lives because of it. The family was pretty set in their belief that they thought someone had taken Tracy, even though they were unsure of who. They felt like she wouldn't have gone off with someone she didn't know, and her mother told the Pottsville Republican, quote, "She wouldn't go with a stranger anyplace. So if someone lured her away, it was somebody she thought was a friend," end quote.
And they had no idea why she was going down to the square?
At this point, no.
She didn't say that she had plans to meet up with a friend or anything. She just said that she was going to go there.
So potentially things start to trickle out more and more as we move on. But at first, like, if you are looking at this from the first day it's reported on and you know nothing about the case and you know nothing about these people, you're not going to know why she was going there. So we find out later. So we'll keep going. I don't want to give everything away.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that the square is still a hotspot location for potential abduction.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, you have a lot of people. I assume that at this time you have a lot of people going in and out of the location.
If she's there after she dropped the stuff off at her sister's, so you'd assume between like 6:30 and 7.
Yeah, I mean, anytime, really, because it's Saturday night.
So, moving right along, within the first 3 months of the investigation, things kind of just came to a halt. Corporal Dressler of the state police at Likens had told the Pottsville Republican, quote, "There's been nothing, absolutely nothing in the last month or so," end quote. I mean, honestly, there really weren't any leads to work other than obviously finding her car. But outside of that, there were no other signs of Tracy. And because of this, the family became frustrated pretty quickly, which is entirely understandable. But in December of 1989, roughly 4 months after Tracy had gone missing, a local company known as Metal Industries and Plastics put aside some money to erect some signs locally that would hopefully jog people's memories and keep Tracy's case in the forefront of their minds. There were at least 4 signs erected by early January of 1990 in both the Millersburg and Halifax areas. And I say signs because that's kind of what they were. They weren't like giant billboards or like this big massive thing. But either way, in early 1990, authorities received a tip to search a pond off of Powell's Valley Road in Wayne Township, Pennsylvania. I'm not entirely sure if the tip came in because these signs were put up, but either way, authorities took the lead seriously and searched said pond, but unfortunately were unable to find anything of note.
What's the connection between the company that put up the signs and the Kroh family?
Didn't seem like there was one. It was just like, this was kind of like a tight-knit community, and everybody just was horrified by what had happened, even though, I mean, in reality, they don't really know what happened, just that she's missing. But it really took a toll on this town, and it seems like they all just wanted to pitch in any way they could.
So as things were winding down and it didn't seem like the investigation was going anywhere, they kind of just took it upon themselves.
Exactly. Now, something that you'll notice with this case is that as time goes on, more information periodically comes out regarding the night Tracy went missing that hopefully can piece together a timeline. So I'm going to just kind of lump all those together now so you have a good idea of everything that comes out over the years. So first of all, there was a sighting of Tracy near the Susquehanna River sometime that night, but it's unclear when. We also know that there were those 2 sightings of Tracy, the first being at the trailer park and then at Millersburg Square. Another sighting of Tracy comes out later as well, and that's one where she's supposedly seen sitting on some steps in or across from Millersburg Square, but it's unclear exactly what she was doing there, whether she was waiting for someone or what. But the employee of Williams French Fries, located in the square, who apparently gave that tip, must not have seen anything else because literally nothing else is ever reported about that. And one last piece of information that's released is, I guess Tracy might have previously made plans with someone, either to visit a friend or something like that, and that's why she was in Millersburg Square. At first, it was totally unclear who this friend might have been or who she was planning to see, but it's later revealed that she was most likely planning to visit her boyfriend.
I might be getting ahead of myself, but was she bullied at school at all?
No, not at all. No, people really seemed to like her. There were so many quotes from different people about how great of a kid she was. Like, it just seemed like she was just really well liked. Okay, so as the investigation continued and the 1-year anniversary came and went, there still really wasn't much for authorities to go on. They did create a 4-person task force to spend more time to dedicate to finding her, but that didn't seem to help much at all. During this time, though, Ellen did try and get her daughter's case featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. The Pottsville Republican reported, quote, "In February, she sent the producers a letter, a picture of Tracy, newspaper clippings, and a police poster to let them know the case was not fabricated. When she did not get a response, she called them 8 weeks later," end quote. The article goes on to state that the FBI has to review the file before Unsolved Mysteries will even consider putting the case on the show, which I found to be super interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea about that.
Right, and when I was researching this, I was like, well, why? Like, it's a TV show. They can essentially put out whatever they want.
I don't know. It's strange. Maybe because it was like such a big show and they wanted to like vet things before people put them out.
I guess maybe, but it seems like Ellen did her due diligence. Like, she's got all her stuff there, like the police information, all that.
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, like, maybe that's a policy for Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, yeah.
Before they were to produce an episode on anything, it was like a check and balances type thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I thought that was something that was unique that I didn't know before. So something else that was reported on around this time that I thought was really sad had to do with Tracy's mother and her younger sister, Kimberly. What she talks about is something else that I feel like we don't discuss all that often in these cases, and that's how a tragedy like this can affect the siblings of a loved one that's missing, but more so in terms of how they're treated by their parents afterwards, and not necessarily in a bad way. Ellen told the Pottsville Republican, quote, "I pitied the poor kid, especially in the beginning. It's not so bad now, but at first I wouldn't let her ride her bicycle. I wouldn't let her walk to the neighbors. I was awful," end quote.
Yeah, I could see how that could go either way. Either parents could have resentment towards their other children because they feel as though they lost one child, so they harbor resentment against their others.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't even explain why. It's just like a feeling.
Right. But then also, now you're a super helicopter parent over your remaining children because you don't want anything to happen. So now their life is totally restricted and they're not allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
Because you're worried that something might happen to them.
Exactly. And I mean, I totally don't blame her. But then you have to look at, like, Kimberly, and she's 12, and now she's going to potentially lose out on more things that she might have been able to do, not in, like, her mom meaning to type of way. Like, she doesn't want to keep her from experiencing things, but of course she's just going to be way more worried.
Right, and we're talking about times when, kids were allowed to go out and do whatever.
Yeah.
Run around, the late 80s, early 90s. You had a lot more freedom. Kids would stay out until it got dark. So now if you're restricting all that, she's not going to have all the same experiences with her friends and stuff like that.
Just sucks.
Yep.
Now, in the beginning of the investigation, it certainly seemed like everyone was on the same page, right? That the family and authorities were considering this a potential crime. However, in 1991, 2 years after Tracy had vanished, it's reported that authorities still hadn't ruled out the idea that Tracy had run away, which I thought was pretty surprising to hear. Do authorities just change their minds when there's nothing to go on? All signs are pointing to the opposite of her choosing to leave, so I don't really understand that.
Yeah, I don't think they would change their mind the longer time goes on, but I guess it depends on how their statements regarding the matter came across. Because it's one thing to say, oh, we haven't ruled out that she left on her own, versus, yeah, we have no signs that this was an abduction. She very well could have just ran away.
Yeah, definitely not like that. It was more along the lines of we haven't ruled out that she hasn't run away, and we haven't ruled out the idea that foul play might have been involved. But it seemed like in the beginning, everyone was pretty set on the fact that she didn't run away.
And I think that during the early stages of the investigation, it's really good to think that way. And perhaps throughout all of the time that's passed now, because they've had nothing to substantiate either or, they've moved more towards the middle of the two possibilities. Just because if they went really hard on this investigation from the start, and it doesn't look like there's any evidence that we've talked about yet to lead more towards foul play, I think they're just kind of trying to stay in the middle there and not say one thing over the other.
Well, it is 2 years, too, so you think about it, it's not like 4 decades has gone by and she never came home.
Yeah, I know, like, the first 48. I know that's the first 48 hours of a homicide, but it's also true the first 48 hours of any investigation, a missing person investigation, a homicide, things like that. The early stages are very important because you're trying to track down people that are still in the area, a person that may have left. So I think as more time goes on, I think once you're starting to reach like the month mark, the 2-month mark, and you're stretching out like that, it almost doesn't matter if it's, 2 months or 2 years or 2 decades. Once you've gotten outside of that initial
2 days,
not even 2 days in general, but like to use that as a guidance.
Yeah.
Once you're getting further and further away from the date of the occurrence, it gets harder and harder. And I think once you get to the point of, 2 years, like I said, I don't think it's much of a difference between 2 years and 2 decades. Outside of the chance of people that were involved, if this was foul play, maybe not being in the area anymore, the more time that goes by. But as far as like finding evidence and stuff.
Yeah, it makes sense. Sucks, but it makes sense. So anyway, at this point in 1991, there's some new information revealed about the night Tracy disappeared. 2 individuals who actually owned and operated a small shop in Millersburg Square came forward to authorities. Apparently, the weekend that Tracy went missing, the 2 shop owners, who were named Marianne and Harry, hadn't actually been around. But when they returned from whatever plans they'd had, they started to hear about the fact that Tracy was missing and, of course, heard some rumors. And those rumors involved 2 different vans. More specifically, one van that was seen around the area of Millersburg Square sometime after Tracy vanished. Well, I guess this mother-son duo were paying attention at a later date and noticed this van and brought the information to police. The son actually even drew a picture of said van, which I guess was dark-colored, but it doesn't seem as though that went anywhere. And according to a few articles that reported on this information, the 2 shop owners didn't see it again. Now, later on that year, in November of 1991, a group known as the Adirondacks Search and Rescue of Albany volunteered their time to search the area around where Tracy went missing to see if they might be able to find anything that may have been missed before and to re-look at the investigation with a fine-tooth comb. The Pottsville Republican reported the following regarding this search and rescue group. Quote, "The group's procedure in investigating a case, extensive interviewing and searching, is similar to techniques used by police but is more intensified and specialized," said Marilyn A. Green, one of the founding members of the group. End quote.
It's on her high horse there, isn't she?
I thought you'd make that face.
We're like the police, but better.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying. I'm like, so I put that in there too because I wanted to see what you had to say about it.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like, what other techniques could they have that are better than detectives?
Well, I would never say that just because somebody's a detective, they're the best investigator in the world.
Of course not, but still.
So
they have a lot of tools at their disposal, though.
I don't know why. It makes me think of Yellow Jackets.
Okay.
And Christina Ricci's character.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, if you look at her and you put her next to a lazy detective.
Yeah.
Who would be able to dig up more dirt and find more information out?
Oh, definitely her.
So it's kind of a nose up in the air type thing to say, to like put yourself above investigators. But may not be false. They might be really good at what they do because they got a lot of free time. And
that's true. Yeah, not like an overflow of cases and, they can really take the time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah, and I mean, some departments you might have like a quote-unquote detective, but maybe he still does all the work a patrolman does. Mm-hmm. So it caught me off guard.
Your face was just great.
Yeah, it made me laugh, but who knows? Maybe they're good.
Maybe. But not that good, because even with this fresh set of eyes,
nothing comes out.
Nothing comes of it, no. So not only did the Kroh family and investigators have help from this group, but the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was working to bring attention to the case as well. Just before the 3rd anniversary of Tracy's disappearance, there was going to be a, quote, mass mailing of roughly 50 million cards with Tracy's photo and case details on them sent all over America, with 3 million of those going to individuals residing in Pennsylvania, which obviously is helpful to get people living in the area more exposure to the case.
We didn't really talk a lot about the investigation at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like we talked about how her car was found and it was locked and her belongings were taken out of it. But are we going to get any more information from that? Was there DNA found from anything? I mean, we're talking late 80s, early 90s. This is now the time where DNA evidence is starting to be a thing.
That's something that is literally never talked about in this case, is her car.
Because you're thinking maybe she went and picked up a friend, was driving around. Then you now have a link to say, oh, we need to talk to this person.
Joe Schmo.
Or Josephine Schmo.
Oh, yes, maybe.
You never know. So maybe that friend never came forward because they knew something bad had happened to her and they didn't want to implicate herself or themselves.
I mean, yeah, that's totally possible, but I will say it seems like the car wasn't like a big thing. It's not like it was in Diane Wolf's case where it's like, oh, it had all this stuff potentially from a quarry on it and all of this. It just looked like normal, just sat there.
Yeah.
Like she placed it there and then...
And it was parked in a normal spot.
Parked in front of that 5 and dime store. And then she was seen either sitting in or across from the square. I mean, she must have just gotten out of her car. Maybe she was waiting for a friend. Who knows? But the car doesn't seem to be a big point in this investigation.
Okay.
Unless it was and it was never reported on. I don't know.
No, I just, like you find her car. It's parked there. You look for some type of evidence inside the car to see if there was any other person in there with her at the time.
If there's anything, it's got to be something that we just don't know.
Yeah.
Also, in 1992, Unsolved Mysteries advised that they were, quote, putting Tracy's case on a shelf, end quote. Which means they weren't going to broadcast it, which is just absolutely wild to me. And what's extra annoying about this is that Ellen had sent in numerous requests for her daughter's case to be featured, but they never even responded to her. They only responded to one of her daughter's requests.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, maybe the intern that was getting all the mail didn't deliver it one day when Ellen sent in all the stuff. Or...
All right, fine, whatever.
But it's interesting to hear that they're putting it on the shelf, so they do know about it. I wonder if they ran it by people and maybe, the FBI looked at it and then they were like, no, we don't want to touch this for now.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It just seems like there was nothing.
That could also be another reason why.
But then why wouldn't you put it out? If there's nothing, broadcasting her case on the show would be very helpful if there's literally nothing.
Right, but it's a show and it's trying to generate views. So if they're like, yes, this girl went and dropped stuff off at her sister's house, the stuff was found at the sister's house, the girl was seen in the town square, and that's it.
Okay,
that doesn't make for a enthralling episode.
I get it. It just sucks.
So maybe they were putting it on the shelf to wait for more twists and turns.
Maybe, yeah.
And then they would air it later.
Anyway, let's fast forward a bit to late 1993, because this is where things take a turn in Tracy's case. Over 4 years had passed since the young woman had disappeared, and authorities hadn't really had anything to go off of up until this point. There were no clues as to where she might be, and like I said before, the only thing they'd ever been able to find of hers was her car. Well, that all changed in November of 1993 when a farmer whose property abutted the Wiconisco Creek in Dauphin County, Pennsylvania, found some items that belonged to Tracy. It's reported that, quote, what was left of Tracy's wallet, along with her driver's license and her National Honor Society card, were found washed up onto this guy's property. This property was located approximately 9 miles, or roughly a 10-minute drive, from Millersburg Square. After these items were discovered, authorities searched the area around Wiconisco Creek to see if they'd be able to find anything else belonging to her. One of the investigators told the Republican and Herald, quote, I think the rest of her wallet or her purse may be in that area. Maybe there's other possessions there, but it's such a vast area. We can't just go dig up someone's farm, end quote.
Well, I mean,
you can.
They kind of can, but...
if you don't want to be rude, but...
This farmer came to them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And said that, hey, I found this property.
I'm sure he would have been cool with it.
I'm sure he would have been cool with them going, at least searching the rest of the creek up the...
They did search.
Okay.
But I don't believe they dug up.
They didn't dig up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But 4 years, too. You have to think, could it be under stuff? You could dig
erosion and
yeah,
rain and stuff like that. I wonder where the creek begins. Does it come from a larger body of water?
Maybe, but, no, I wouldn't say so.
No.
No.
Is the river near any of the areas that she would have been in?
It's east of Millersburg, and
a great distance?
Not horribly far.
What's that river? That was the other one that they searched?
That's the Susquehanna.
Susquehanna?
Yeah, they didn't search that.
Oh, that
they
there was a
searched
site.
a pond.
But there was a sighting.
There was a sighting, yes. But it's literally 3 minutes from Millersburg Square, so she could have just walked over there maybe when she was waiting for her friend or whoever else, whether it was a boyfriend or
So they never searched the river?
Not that I know of.
Strange.
Yeah.
There was a sighting at a river. A girl's gone missing, and they never searched the river.
Hey, I don't know. I'm not the investigator.
I wonder if the Adirondacks searched it.
The Adirondacks of Albany. They did. I think they did search the Wiconisco area. So it's also reported that the next day after these items were found on that farmer's property, authorities also found some photos and other items that they said were connected to the case, but it's entirely unclear what those items were or where they were even found. But they did say they were being sent to the crime lab to be examined. The Daily Item reported that authorities stated, quote, we want to determine the conditions the items have been exposed to over the years. This will give us more insight as to where they may have been. It helps us to limit the scope of our search, end quote. Which I think that's referring to both sets of items that were found, like the wallet or the parts of the wallet, the driver's license, all that, and then maybe supposedly these other items as well.
Photographs that pertain to the investigation were found there?
Not like at the creek. They just said like, oh, photos and some other items were found.
Oh,
like,
okay.
What are they? Where were they found? Nobody knows. It was just reported on.
I thought they were found at the creek. Then I was like, did somebody take a fucking box of evidence and dump it in a creek?
No.
I was like, is that what you...
I don't think so.
Okay.
Now, after the wallet and some of its contents were found, it seemed like that kind of fueled some momentum into further tips and leads coming in. But, of course, not all of them would be credible. There was one lead that came in, though, in April of 1994 that made headlines because it actually involved 2 other women who'd gone missing across the country. So this tip came in from Houston, Texas, and the individual providing the tip called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Arlington, Virginia, with some very interesting information. This caller stated that they had seen Tiffany Sessions, Bethan Miller, and Tracy Kroh being held against their will and were being forced into sex work. Now, Tiffany Sessions was a 20-year-old woman who went missing from Gainesville, Florida in February of 1989. Bethan Miller was a 14-year-old girl who went missing from Idaho Springs, Colorado in August of 1983. And obviously, we know Tracy was 17 years old and she went missing from Millersburg or Halifax, Pennsylvania in August of 1989. So this caller also stated that the girls were being held by a man named Thomas Stewart. It's unclear who this Thomas Stewart guy was and if that's even a real name. But either way, the final piece of information given by the caller was that this man, Mr. Stewart, seemed to be transporting the women in a white van with Florida license plates along with a second van that was described as being either gray or blue, which the license plates were not identified on.
The 2 vans.
There was one van.
No, you said there were 2 vans.
Oh, yeah, no, there were 2 vans, and then one van was seen in the Millersburg Square area. So I don't know about that other one. There wasn't a ton of info on that, but this one, yeah, that's interesting.
I remembered that from earlier, and then the son drew a picture of one, and
and it was dark.
It was
colored.
a darker color.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was light gray or dark gray, but you assume could be the dark gray van. Now you have this tip coming in. This guy has 2 vans. Very interesting.
Obviously, any tips and leads to the potential whereabouts of Tracy Kroh and these other women are things that people will cling on to for hope, especially the families. I mean, how can you blame them? But you absolutely have to take these types of things with a grain of salt. It could be some sick person calling in or someone lying to try and implicate someone else in something or something crazy like that. But Tiffany Sessions' father, Patrick, had actually been interviewed quite a bit when this tip came in, as Tiffany's case was another that was very highly publicized. Actually, all 3 of these cases were, so that's just another reason as to why this tip probably might not hold much weight, because most of the information was already public knowledge.
So you think that this person that called in the anonymous tip had knowledge of all 3 of these women, and then he was like, oh, I saw all 3 of them.
And maybe he was pissed off at Thomas Stewart, and he was like, I'm going to fuck that guy over. I mean, there are whack jobs in this world that would try something like that.
Right, well, when you first said that, they stated that they were being forced into sex work against their will. I was wondering, like, how could somebody know, unless they have firsthand knowledge, like, by knowing the person that was, you know, holding them captive or something, how would you know that these 3 women were being forced into sex work against their will?
Yeah, you just saw the vans? I
Right.
mean, I don't understand.
That was something that just caught my attention. I was like, how do you know that they're being forced into sex work?
Like, are you watching them?
And how do you know it's those 3? And how...
Yeah, it's very interesting, the whole thing. But obviously, this makes you question. It makes me question. It makes everybody question, is this just a hoax?
Could be. There's more answers that I would want in regards to it. But the 2 van thing caught me.
Definitely. Well, what Patrick Sessions told the Times Leader really intrigued me. He stated, quote, "It sure makes me wonder, but we've had hoaxes and extortionists before. Someone who is a Fruit Loop and follows missing person cases could have made it up. This one really interests me because of the specific nature of it. I think this is worth following up. My position has always been this is an ongoing case," end quote. So that makes me wonder exactly what parts of this tip he believed were valid enough to want to follow up on. But then, to counter this whole thing, in another article with the Daily News about the same subject, it's reported, quote, "Sessions said he had no plans to look for his daughter in Austin because of the lack of information available from the caller," end quote. So I'm not really sure where Patrick stood on things, or where authorities would stand on things, And I thought the tip came in from Houston, not Austin. So I feel like there's just so much confusion around this whole thing. It just doesn't seem to hold any weight to me.
Yeah, that was strange because I wrote down Houston and then you said Austin. And I was like, that's interesting. I mean, Patrick could also think that his work needs to be done in a different location, but he feels as though it's credible enough that Houston or Austin PDs should be following up on the tip.
Yeah.
So maybe he's not going to bring himself there because he's in Florida?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to go to Texas to follow up on it, but he believes that authorities in that area should.
Yeah, definitely possible. The other thing about this whole situation is that authorities didn't want this tip to be made public, like at all, because they hadn't even really had a chance to look into it first. So like authorities in the area were saying, we haven't taken the time to find out if this tip actually holds merit. We didn't want this to be reported on. And even one of the journalists that wrote about it was like, authorities didn't want this tip made public. And I was like, woof.
So how did they even get the tip then?
Somehow, some way they got it and journalists ran with it and it became huge headlines in 94.
Somebody's in trouble for leaking that.
Probably, yeah. But unfortunately, nothing came of this tip and none of the missing women were located. So now we're going to get back on track with Tracy's case. Not much came of the investigation for approximately 6 more years until around the 10th anniversary of Tracy's disappearance. The Daily Item reported that things were beginning to heat up. According to the Dauphin County DA at the time, he also stated, quote, "Information developed over the last few months has led to a renewed effort. Although we have not recovered a body or anything like that, we have reason to be hopeful," end quote. Also at this point in the investigation, police had stated that they were nearly positive that Tracy was not a runaway, that it was not a stranger abduction, and it was not a suicide. They were sure that whoever did this knew Tracy, and authorities apparently had a relatively short list of persons of interest or maybe even suspects, just based on how this whole scenario is reported on.
How long after the location of the property in the creek did this statement get put out?
7 years.
7 years. And now it's starting to heat up.
Yes.
So we're talking, 10 years?
This is the 10-year anniversary
10-year
around
anniversary.
that time. Yep.
Just by finding the stuff 7 years prior, the property in the creek, I think that can automatically shift investigators, or should probably shift investigators to believe that there was some type of foul play involved. Because if she had ran away, why would she throw all of her property into a creek?
But it could have been considered a suicide at that time, too. Not that I ever think it was, but them saying, it's not any of these 3 options. You pretty much only have one.
Okay, but why would her car be parked at the square and then her property found in the creek if she committed suicide?
Hey, I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here.
I get it. If she was going to commit suicide at a body of water, it probably would have been the Susquehanna.
Yeah, I agree.
It was way closer. It was a big river. It was probably faster moving.
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's dumb. I think that when they found the property, that should have switched them back into foul play investigative mode.
For all we know, it did, and they just didn't say anything about it. And now they're at the 10-year anniversary, and they're like, you know what? We're going to let everyone know where we're at with this investigation. This is how we feel about it. This is what we think happened. And yes, things are starting to heat up, but it doesn't seem like they're giving anything else.
Okay.
But I want to say, before we move on, this whole thing that I'm about to tell you right now doesn't really come out publicly until later, but authorities were apparently, sometime throughout this span of time, looking very heavily into Tracy's boyfriend. Unfortunately, I don't know his name, but I guess for a while investigators had been looking at him as a potential person of interest because of the fact that it's believed Tracy was planning to go see him after she was last seen in the square.
Right, or go to the square with him.
Yeah, totally possible.
Like a date night, a Saturday night date night. You go into the square, it's like shops and attractions and stuff. So you would assume, I made the joke earlier, I was going to say, bum, 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 when you said the boyfriend. But we always say, where do you start? You always start significant other, boyfriend, husband, whatever, girlfriend.
Yeah, I was going to say, come on, there's the other side of the coin there, too. There's men, there's women that do this, too.
Yeah, so interesting now, 10 years later, that they're finally releasing this.
Yes, and, well, no, they're not. What do you mean? That they're releasing the info about the boyfriend?
That they looked into the boyfriend, or that they had been looking into the boyfriend? That doesn't
come out for, decades.
Oh, okay.
Nothing was ever really talked about.
Right, I get what you're saying. Yeah. You said this doesn't come out till way later, but...
Yeah, I just want to let you know now, because I was wondering, is it at this point that they're saying this is heating up because of this reason?
Yeah.
But We also find out that Tracy had actually made a phone call from a payphone in the square the night she went missing. And it's believed that call may have been to the boyfriend. So it's just more and more that's piling on here, right?
Right.
Well, I also believe back when Tracy went missing, the boyfriend's family may have owned a pool business. And at least the rumor mill perpetuated the idea that Tracy's body was dumped in an area where a pool was supposed to be being built, and her body was covered with the concrete used to build the pool. But that is just the rumor mill. But I did want to lay it all out there to say, like, these are reasons why the police may have been looking into him.
So I know you said that it's not released till way later that they were looking at the boyfriend.
Yeah.
But were they looking at the boyfriend from the very beginning?
I'm not sure, unfortunately.
When did the rumors start swirling that Tracy could have been buried under a pool that was being built?
So I think it was all talked about in town. I'm not entirely sure. Like,
from the get-go, though.
I think, yes, but
because you're always
going to
think, because the rumors had to be off the bat, oh, it might have been the boyfriend.
Yeah, a lot of it you see, like, people talking about it now on Facebook and, like, forums and stuff. You see people saying, oh, I used to live there. Like, everyone thought it was a boyfriend because of this, this, and this. And, like, there were a bunch of comments about it. So I'm like, all right, well, if multiple people are saying this, and then now reporters are putting out, like, oh, they looked into the boyfriend and da-da-da-da-da. So that's really all you get from, like, a journalistic perspective. But you see a lot of the conjecture from people who lived there.
Gotcha.
But I will say, based on what I know, it doesn't seem like the boyfriend was ever officially a suspect or even a person of interest, and definitely doesn't appear to be one today, at least based on recent reporting on the case.
Must have sucked for him back then, if people were like, oh, you just killed your girlfriend and buried her under a fucking pool.
Yeah, it's awful. So let's fast forward again until about 2014, when a woman came forward to authorities to tell them about a situation that happened to her decades ago. Literally just 3 months prior to when Tracy disappeared, this woman was nearly abducted in Millersburg Square, but thankfully she was able to get away. At the time, I guess this girl looked very similarly to Tracy, and this intrigued investigators. But they weren't entirely sure if it was related to Tracy's disappearance, but seems like every lead they'd gotten for decades hadn't panned out, so it was certainly something to look into. I will say it's unclear why this woman hadn't come forward sooner, maybe for fear of that person attempting to take her again. I don't really know. But regardless, this woman wasn't able to describe the man who tried to kidnap her, and this lead is just yet another that ends up not panning out.
Was she able to give any information? Like a van?
Nope. It's unfortunate, I know.
Was the guy wearing a name tag that said Thomas?
Hey, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem. I know.
Yeah.
But okay. What I'm about to tell you is going to throw you for a freaking loop. Within the past 3 years, some absolutely wild information has come out in Tracy's case. So let's start with what's reported on in 2019. At this point, authorities have now come to the conclusion that Tracy was kidnapped and murdered back in 1989. Authorities had already stated that they believed whatever happened to her was involving someone she knew, but they certainly hadn't narrowed down the idea that they believed her case to be that of a murder. But now that's where their heads are at. Now that's not the bombshell, though. What is the fact that 2 people end up arrested and charged in Tracy's case. But those charges are not for murder. Let's back up a little bit. I'm going to give you the rundown of that story. In 2018, a woman named Holly Mallett came forward to police to tell them about a friend, acquaintance, person she knew named Matthew Webster, and the fact that he was allegedly somehow involved in Tracy's abduction, rape, and murder. Authorities had stated that Holly was actually considered a, quote, material witness in the case. And I just want to preface this next part of the story and let you know that what I'm about to tell you seems to have taken place from roughly 2016 to 2019. So we have to back up a little bit again, this time to 2016, so you can get a better idea of what's been going on in terms of the investigation that's gotten us to this point. So, according to an article with the Republican and Herald, Detective Colarusso with the State Police Troop H at Harrisburg stated that sometime in 2016, investigators searched a property located on Middle Road. Now, that property had apparently been previously owned by Matthew Webster, this guy that Holly Mallett had told authorities had been involved in what happened to Tracy. And that property had been a very short distance from the trailer park where Tracy had dropped off the items for her sister. So then, the story from there goes something like this. Matthew allegedly came to Holly Mallett's home the day after this search took place on his previously owned property on Middle Road, and he arrived there with some other random woman whose name has never been released. It's unclear who she was or what her relation was to either Holly or Matthew. But either way, he was apparently inebriated at the time that he made these statements, but said something to Holly about how he was involved in the rape and murder of Tracy Kroh. The Republican and Herald reported the following regarding those alleged statements. Quote, Mallett went on to tell authorities that he and his buddies came into contact with Kroh at the square in Millersburg. The woman recalled Webster telling her, it was supposed to be a rape and done, but then it turned out to be a lot more than that, end quote. And apparently, as Matthew's divulging this very damning information, the woman with him allegedly tells him to stop talking. And that's all I know in terms of what allegedly took place during this conversation with Holly, Matthew, and this unidentified woman.
Jesus, what fucking case did we do that this reminds me of? The one where the drunk, what's his name, was supposed to be staying at the house, is drunk, they set the alarm, but he changed the alarm to an earlier time, ended up leaving.
Kathy Linglotti.
Oh my God, who was that guy?
Was it Earl Duquette?
It might have been Earl Duquette, and he shows up with
Kenny Bonifant.
Kenny Bonifant, and he shows up with this other chick, and he's doing all this weird shit. They go back to the house. He's like in the basement. Yeah. There's a stain in the basement.
Yeah.
This reminds me of that case where...
Is this not wild to you right now?
That is wild. So in 2016, this is happening.
Yes.
2019, there are arrests.
Yeah, so 2016, this supposedly happens. 2018, she comes forward to police. 2019.
Talk about taking your fucking time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, first of all.
Better late than never, I guess.
Yes. So, I know that's a lot to take in, and it's incredibly messed up if what Matthew Webster said is true.
Well, why would you say that if you're drunk? Like, why would you say that, first off? But if you're drunk and it's lowering your inhibitions,
yeah,
the search of his property must have sparked this. He probably went into a fucking spiral, got blasted, and then he's out there talking about this shit.
Okay, so it's so weird that you go into that point next, because it was literally my second point I was about to make, was the whole fact that he was supposedly intoxicated when he allegedly made these statements. Does that mean anything, like in terms of potential future charges? Like Holly said that she believed what he said to be truthful, but does that matter? Does him being drunk matter? Like, I don't really know.
I don't think so, because if I'm remembering the term correctly, there's something called an excited utterance, which is generally a type of statement that's made after, a response to trauma or something shocking.
Like a rush of adrenaline almost?
Not necessarily that, but like it's almost like made out of shock. Like something crazy happens and then you end up saying something, right? I wonder if this could be labeled as such, because based on his statements, he could have been involved in this back in the day. Now he's shocked that they're searching his property, or that investigators are searching his property all these years later, and now he's getting drunk and he's like, well, fuck, I'm screwed now type thing.
Might as well just say it.
Right, and it'd be different if you were like trying to take a statement and somebody was intoxicated. Yeah. You can't go in front of a judge while you're intoxicated. Like if you get charged with a DUI, you're not going to be brought in front of a judge or arraigned by a JP until you sober up, because you have to be of sound mind and body to be able to make the decisions.
And for people who don't know what a JP is,
Justice of the Peace, somebody that works essentially as a judge to do arraignments and stuff after hours.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any issue with that. It's still hearsay.
Yep.
But I'm sure it's admissible in court.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to say, like, is that also then considered hearsay? Because she's saying that he said this.
I think if it can be labeled as an excited utterance, because I know it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like, something happens and you're like, oh, fuck, and you say something.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of along the same lines.
It's not like they're going to arrest him for this and be like, you're charged with a murder. It would be, oh, he made this comment. Let's look into this a little more. Yeah. Maybe, try and find other things to see if what he was saying was true.
Yeah, it's not a piece of evidence that's going to be used to try and convict somebody with, but it's at least a good piece of evidence or tip to set investigators on path to look into him further.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so moving on. 2 years passed by, and remember, it was 2016 when these alleged statements were made. So then apparently in June of 2018, Holly Mallett came forward to police to tell them about this encounter she'd had with Webster and this mystery woman. Roughly a year went by, and based on what she told them, a state superior court judge authorized authorities to wiretap Matthew Webster's phone and other electronics on May 3rd, 2019, about a year after Holly had come forward to police.
Mm-hmm.
Grand jury proceedings were then set to take place on June 6th, 2019, with Holly Mallett set to testify that day as well, as she'd received a subpoena for her testimony in regards to Tracy Kroh's case. Now, 2 to 3 days prior to these grand jury proceedings, on June 3rd and June 4th, 2019, Holly and Matthew spoke on the phone. And of course, we know there was a wiretap in place, at least on Matthew's side, so those conversations were being recorded.
Holly gets arrested too.
During said conversations...
You said there were 2 arrests, and I'm like, where's this other fucking person?
Yeah, okay. During said conversations, Matthew knew about the whole situation with Holly going to authorities, likely because they were now convening a grand jury and he too was subpoenaed. But Holly told Matthew that she was, quote, mentally handicapped and not fit to testify, end quote. She also apparently mentioned something along the lines of police having coerced her into making those statements. And also during this conversation, Matthew apparently forgave Holly for going to police and literally said he was going to pay for a lawyer to represent her at the grand jury trial.
Are they dating or something?
Literally. Next line. Already I have about 1,400 questions. But at the top of the list right now is how the hell did these two know each other?
Some type of romantic relationship, I'd assume.
So that's what I was thinking. I couldn't tell for sure what kind of relationship the two had. But like, honestly, you have to be pretty close to consider paying for her lawyer. So then you also think about like the time frame between the two. 2016 to 2018, were they dating when that was said and then they broke up and now she wanted to come forward?
I don't know. Her whole thing to him saying that police coerced her. How did police get in touch with you in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking 3 decades later.
Yep.
That's a very specific statement to coerce.
Yeah.
You're coercing, like, to say that this other person came with the, I don't know, it's too... Convoluted of a story to have coerced. It had to be true, and maybe now she's regretting it.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe they were dating, and she got pissed off at him, and she was like, well, I'm going to fucking throw you under the bus now. Maybe that's why it took 2 years for her to come forward.
Maybe. The only thing I've seen is like some rumors and conjecture and like people saying random things here and there on posts on Facebook saying that they had a romantic relationship before, but I haven't confirmed it, like, legitimately.
Because if they did have a romantic relationship and something like this happened in 2016, and maybe it's not the exact scenario of how she learned of his involvement or potential involvement, then maybe they break up or something traumatic happens in that relationship. He does something messed up and now she's pissed, 2 years later.
Yeah.
Then that's when she goes in and makes the statement to police. And then later on they get back together or something and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Comes up with this story. Oh, I'm not mentally fit to testify. Police coerced me, just spinning these lies.
And he's like, oh, I forgive you.
To be in his good graces.
Yeah.
And trying to get out of what she just told the police.
Yeah, so let's just go back to these recorded calls. Matthew and Holly also allegedly discussed what they were going to say to get their stories straight, I guess. It's reported that they were discussing how they'd give their account of these statements previously provided to authorities. So that's kind of what it seems like to me. I think they were like talking and discussing how they were going to present this to the grand jury.
Yeah, kind of like landscapers.
Yes, I was like, how does mowing my lawn match up to this right now?
No. We reference way too many shows in here that people have probably never seen. We didn't even finish this show.
Yeah.
But the husband and wife, and they come together and they're like, oh, this is the story that we're going to tell.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what was going on here. But at the end of the day, guys, we all just need to come back to the conversations are recorded.
Honestly.
So June 6th rolls around and the grand jury proceedings take place. And I literally shit you not, both Holly and Matthew lie. Matthew stated that he did not discuss what Holly was supposed to say in court. The Republican and Herald reported, quote, Webster repeatedly denied having the recorded conversations with Mallett in the time before her grand jury appearance, end quote. Also, Holly apparently said something similar, stating that she and Webster did not speak about her upcoming testimony. According to the Charlie Project's write-up on the case, quote, She had testified before a grand jury investigating Tracy's disappearance in June 2019 and admitted she had spoken to the police, but claimed she couldn't remember what she'd said to them. Police believe she lied when she claimed she had not previously discussed what she would tell the grand jury prior to her testimony, end quote.
So what were the charges being put against them? Because I assume that...
We'll get there.
They're both going to be charged with perjury.
Okay, fine. You got there.
That's it, though?
We'll get there. So before we get there, I did want to ask, at first glance, to me anyway, I would have assumed that Holly knew he was being wiretapped, but does she have to actually know? Like, I know they classified her as a material witness, but...
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so she probably had absolutely no idea that these conversations were being recorded, and neither did Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely no idea.
Okay.
The material witness would never be privy to anything. The only time they would be in the know about it would be if they're wearing a wire to go...
Get this information
Get the
from
information
that
from
person.
somebody, yeah.
Okay.
They're not going to know anything about it.
At this point, both Webster and Mallett were charged with perjury in Tracy Kroh's case. In August of 2019, Matthew Webster was arrested, and then in December of 2019, he was sentenced to 4 to 6 months for the felony perjury charge. However, he received credit for time served because he hadn't been able to make bail when previously arrested in August. He was then released from prison and given 12 months probation. Now, Holly was also charged, and in July of 2020, she pled no contest to the charges, and she was sentenced in September of 2020 to 6 to 23 months in prison for her perjury charge. She was released from prison in February of 2021. And I didn't even think of this until just now, but do you think that her sentence was harsher because she had come forward and then she, flipped her story?
I think so, probably.
Yeah.
Because it was more egregious at that point because he was like a suspect or a person of interest in a case, and she was somebody that came forward as a material witness that set investigators to even put the wiretap in place. And then it turns out that after she, told police about this thing happening, now she's lying that she can't remember what she told police, but you know that she is able to remember what she told police because she's going to tell Matt that she said this and that she's going to act like she can't remember or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it's a much harsher sentence. What, 6 times longer?
Yeah, definitely.
Roughly.
I mean, she only served 8 months of it, though.
Yeah, still. More than him.
True. Now, at this point, I'm sure your brain hurts with all the information I've given you, as was mine while I was researching this. But before we move forward, I do just want to back up just a smidge to around the time the grand jury testimonies were taking place. Remember, that was June of 2019. Nearly simultaneously, authorities were searching another property that may have been connected to Tracy's disappearance. This property was located on Mountain House Road in Jackson Township, Pennsylvania. The search involved excavation equipment and cadaver dogs to presumably try and locate Tracy Kroh's remains. The property that was being searched was roughly 10 miles or about a 15-minute drive from where Tracy went missing from at Millersburg Square. The property was owned by a man named Mark Warfell.
That last name is Orful.
Yes, it is. It's really hard to say without sounding like
Warfel.
Warfell.
Like you got a bunch of marbles in your mouth.
Seriously. Back when Tracy went missing, he was 56 years old and ran an auto body or an auto paint shop. Both have been stated, but the shop was on the property at Mountain House Road. Reporters had even interviewed the now 86-year-old man in July of 2019 when the property was being searched, and he said he wasn't worried about all the police activity there and that they wouldn't find anything. And I actually want to play the clip of him talking to reporters for you now.
The property sits just 10 miles from where Tracy Kroh was last seen. It's owned by Mark Warfell, who used to run an auto body shop there. When Fox 43 spoke with Warfell in July 2019, he said he wasn't concerned about the police search.
What are you digging for? They thought maybe the remains of Tracy Kroh might be there. Well, they said you can dig all you want to, but you ain't going to find nothing.
Do you have any opinions on him?
Does he have a glass eye?
I think he might.
Yeah. Nothing crazy at this point. I think that's a quick clip to kind of judge somebody on.
Now, there was also another video that I found from Penn Live that is of an interview with a guy who was hired to maintain the property, as Mr. Warfell apparently no longer resided there. It's unclear why Mark was on the property when it was being searched if he didn't live there, but I can only assume he was made aware of the search and headed over to keep an eye on things. But let me play a few clips from this video for you as well now. I'll also have the full video linked on our website if you want to watch the whole thing.
I've been doing work on this property for about a year and a half or so to 2 years now. They were just doing some preliminary investigations, walking around, seeing what they could find. I actually took them through the house and showed them where things have been stolen. Because this house is unlocked, but there's been multiple break-ins throughout the time here. The family that owns the property is the Warfell family. He has owned the property. His family built it back when he was very young, and I've just been keeping up on it for the past couple years. Nobody's visited the property aside from me for about 2 years. Mr. Warfell is now too old to come out here and visit the property. I just keep it looking nice. They took a bunch of things out of the shed behind you. They also took things from that black shed out, which is actually charred on the inside. I actually opened it up yesterday to show the officers around. The first time I opened it up in months, actually years. Inside is completely black, almost charred.
First of all, the fact that he said he's maintaining the property and making it look nice, I was like, you're not doing a good job.
Well, that was also after police ran through it.
Yes, I feel like it was, I think he maintains maybe the grounds.
Yes.
Like probably mows the lawn, whatever. Yeah, it was like, oh God, that house looks run down as shit.
Yeah, it does.
So I think he was more of like an actual property manager or something, like for the land as in the property, not the actual home.
Yep.
But the number one thing that feels like the most important from that whole video is the fact that that shed is burned.
Yes.
That's insane.
The only thing I question, though, is like, first thing you're going to think of, could they burnt a body in there? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't have a very big fire in there without burning the whole shed down. It's like a size of an outhouse.
But did he like
burn property in there?
Property, clothes, a murder weapon. I mean, there's multiple things, like you don't know.
Yeah.
Could have been anything.
Definitely something could have been, some type of evidence could have been disposed of inside that shed. He could bring it in there, close the door, set the fire, blah, blah, blah.
Well, he made a comment too. He's like, oh, I hadn't been in there in a couple years or whatever, but he didn't elaborate, or it was cut out of the video if he did elaborate. But it made me think maybe it hadn't looked like that a couple years ago.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like,
did that guy go back to the house, get some property, and then burn it?
Or have somebody do it or something. I mean, you just don't know.
Orful curious.
Orful curious. I mean, when I watched that video for the first time, I had the same face as you did, though. I was like, that's interesting. Like, it was just kind of luck that they found that guy there, too, to ask him and be like, oh, you were there when it happened? Tell us more.
Yeah, it's strange, though, that you would assume it probably hadn't been like that a couple years prior because the guy seemed shocked that it was charred in there.
I mean, you probably wouldn't smell that for 30 years.
Yeah, but he also said that he only goes there once a week. It could have been anybody. There's stuff that's stolen inside there. Somebody could have just randomly started a fire and tried to burn it down.
Definitely true.
There's a lot of other things like that could have happened on that property that had nothing to do with Warfell.
But knowing they're searching it and knowing they seem to be interested just makes me a little suspicious.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't know if that burnt shed is like a red herring. Where, that's very interesting. It's burnt. Somebody burnt something in there recently. I don't know. That first video with Warfell in it, that was the day they were searching?
Yes. So
that was the day they were searching. I assume that he must have had advance notice for him to show up.
Yeah, either that or somebody told him. I mean, I don't know how else he would have known. Because even that kid in the video said that he didn't live there. I say kid, he's probably an adult. I apologize.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I'm interested to see what kind of stuff they found from the house and if that shed has anything to do with it.
All right, well, let's keep going. I will say, at this point, no one really knew what Warfell's potential involvement could have been in Tracy's abduction and murder and why his property was even being searched in the first place. We do know that at the time this search was taking place, Matthew Webster and Holly Mallett were dealing with the whole grand jury thing, as well as their perjury charges, and based on the statements made by Holly, if they were true, it seemed as though Matthew Webster could have been involved. But there's still more, so let's keep going. After this whole situation with Mark Warfell's house being searched, he apparently ends up getting himself into a whole world of shit. I don't know what it is about the men in this case freaking out the day after their properties are searched, but Penn Live reported that Mr. Warfell ends up harassing some woman living in Halifax and he began acting this way because, in some way, shape, or form, she was supposedly a witness in some other criminal investigation involving him. I'm not sure what the specifics of that situation are, and honestly, they don't really pertain to the story, but he does end up arrested for his actions. Penn Live later reported, quote, Warfell was arrested on September 4th, 2019, after he was accused of repeatedly harassing, threatening, and breaking into the home of a woman in Halifax Township, end quote.
Harassing is one thing, breaking into the home, though?
Yeah.
Wow.
So now we're just going to fast forward to 2022. And there haven't been really any other updates on Matthew Webster or Holly Mallett, and based on what was reported, the two were out of prison at this time. But now, Mark Warfell seems to be at the top of the list of individuals authorities want to look into. In March of 2022, his property on Mountain House Road is searched by authorities yet again. This second search wasn't confirmed as being related to the Tracy Kroh case, but I think we can all infer.
Could it have anything to do with the other criminal investigation that lady was a witness in?
Maybe. I'm not entirely sure.
Mm-hmm.
But less than 3 months after his property was searched in March, now at the end of May in 2022, literally less than a month ago of when this episode is coming out, Mark Warfell is finally named as a suspect in Tracy Kroh's abduction and murder.
Wow, that's big.
That's real big.
He's not even a person of interest. He is a suspect.
Yes.
They must have found something in the house. Or the shed.
There are a few things that happen that I want to go over so we can get some semblance of an idea of why police might be naming him as a suspect now. First of all, we know his property had been searched, but it hasn't been released if anything came of that search. The burned shed we talked about before is definitely intriguing, so I would be curious to see if something came of that to maybe push them to name him as a suspect, but again, we don't know anything about the searches yet.
The only thing I want to say about the searches is that if he had like a property manager or somebody maintaining the property for him, that guy that was in the video, and he was not at the property pretty much ever.
Yeah.
If it was like almost essentially abandoned, like people stealing shit out of it, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I find it difficult, unless it's something very specific, to say this is going to be linked to him because there have been so many people in and out of the house. He hasn't lived there for so long. But continue on.
Okay. So one of the other things that happened was absolutely freaking mind-boggling and not something I expected. So one of Tracy's sisters, Kimberly, had apparently worn a wire and went to the prison where Warfell was being held to confront him. WGAL reported on what took place during that meeting. Quote, her sister asked him to admit to being her biological father and asked him questions about Kroh's disappearance. End quote.
What?
Yes, thank you. The fuck?
What sister is this?
Kimberly, the younger sister. Out of fucking left field.
What the fuck?
Out of left field.
How old would he have been if she was 12 at the disappearance? He's now 80, so I guess he would have been in his 40s.
Yeah, yep.
Interesting. Where the hell did that come from? So the police, that was not probably in the line of questioning police wanted her to ask him.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. So let's take all of this piece by piece.
Okay.
I guess Warfell denied involvement in Tracy's murder and stated that someone else killed Tracy and threw her body down a mine shaft. And mind you, this information literally just came out, so there really aren't any updates on the specifics yet, but I am curious if him saying that about her being thrown down a mine shaft would be true. How else could someone just go missing and never turn up for 33 years?
Right.
This is kind of like how we talked about Diane Wolf. Like, if a quarry was involved, you would think it would be 10 times more difficult probably to find remains.
Right.
But before I get ahead of myself, now that Mark Warfell is the only named suspect in the murder of Tracy Kroh, let's review all of the reasons why he could have been named. 1. He apparently knew Tracy and her father back in 1989. She and her dad had frequented his auto body shop relatively often. 2. This whole potential biological father thing, that could be a possible motive, but I don't know if it was just Kimberly that he might have fathered or if authorities think he could also be Tracy's biological father. That whole situation's kind of murky. And 3. There are some comments in a couple of the articles that reported on these updates that Warfell is suspected in the death of his wife, Doris Warfell, and also potentially having involvement in other sexual assault cases. Which then brings me back to that biological father point. Is that how he is Kimberly's father? Did he rape her mother?
Interesting. The mother's passed away now?
No, but I haven't seen, I'm telling you, this is like literally, there was an article put out like 2 days ago.
Oh, okay.
On this case. So things just keep developing and keep developing. So there's not a lot that we know in regards to specifics, but I think out of everything, the question of him being her biological father is the one that like absolutely slapped me across the face. And I was like, what
strange.
the hell just happened?
That's wild.
And I thought it was misreporting. I had to read like 17 articles to find more that talked about this to be like, is this true?
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy.
Mm-hmm. So I also wonder now, just thinking about other things that have happened in the case, did he frequent the square?
Don't know.
And if he did, was he the one that attempted to abduct that other girl that came forward and said that she was almost abducted 3 months prior?
Hey, it's possible. So at this point, one might hope that authorities were going to charge Warfell in the murder of Tracy Kroh and bring him to trial to hopefully close the case all these years later. But no, that's not what happens. Apparently, sometime between March and May of 2022, while Warfell was being held in prison on those burglary and harassment charges, he was evaluated by a psychologist, and it was determined that he was actually not competent to go to trial in that case. It's also reported that even with treatment, his condition was not going to improve. And that condition, which I literally kid you not was just reported on last week, is dementia.
I was going to say dementia. He's in his 80s.
Yep.
He seemed relatively with it, though, when he was in that video when the investigators were searching his house.
Yeah, but 3 years can make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months can make a difference.
Exactly. So, looking at it that way, Mark Warfell might never be able to stand trial in Tracy's case, which, I mean, that's fucking frustrating.
Yeah, that's terrible. I would hope that the issue with him could be pressed at least to say, okay, you know that she was murdered by somebody else and thrown down a mine shaft.
Mm-hmm.
Give us the information regarding that. And even though it's coming from somebody that is not competent enough to stand trial for charges against themselves, at least if he gives a name, they can go follow up on it and they can see if they can find anything that way.
But then you have to think too, like, did he go and harass this woman and break into her house because he was going through like early stages of dementia and he's starting to do like erratic things?
You get angry.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if like that was like the start of all of this, and then like being in prison, it just deteriorated and it got worse and worse and worse. And now we're to the point where finally authorities are like onto him and they're looking into all this stuff. And now his mental health has just deteriorated to that point where like, now you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, if he's locked up since 2019, he's locked up through COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised though, like, this old man, possibly early stages of dementia, kept in prison.
But
too.
if he's looked into for the death of his wife, other sexual assault.
Yeah, very true.
I mean, he seems like a pretty bad dude.
Yeah.
Even though he's elderly and frail and probably can't, control himself very well, which actually...
That's also a bad thing too, though.
Oh, absolutely. So maybe that's another reason why. But that brings me to that article that I was just mentioning that was like just reported last week. I wanted to read something to you from this. Okay, so there was an article just put out on June 14th, 2022. Oh, I'm sorry, June 13th, 2022. Literally 3 days ago from the point that we're recording this.
Yep.
And the headline is that the Dauphin County DA wants another psych evaluation. And it seems as though he's kind of said like, oh, your time has passed with this. Like, it's not happening. But there's a comment in here that says, quote, the prosecution cited two arguments in their request. Warfell's sexual comments and touching of nurses at the hospital, and that they weren't able to conduct their own evaluation of Warfell's mental status, end quote. But then it goes on to say, quote, but a psychologist evaluation from October 2019 concluded Warfell suffered from major neurocognitive disorder, more commonly referred to as dementia. Researchers have found that people with a version of dementia that affects the impulse control of the brain are more likely to act out sexually and commit crimes, even if they remained law-abiding for the majority of their lives, end quote.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of wild.
Yeah, it goes along with what you said where he was breaking into this lady's house that was potentially a witness in this other crime that he might have been charged with.
Yeah.
Or that he was going to be charged with. And I wonder if that type of dementia only affects inhibition in a certain way, and cognitively you're still able to function. You just lose that inhibition and you can't control yourself.
Yeah, maybe.
So maybe that's why they want another evaluation on him.
Yeah.
To say, yeah, he has a certain stage of dementia, but it's only affecting this. He can still recall all things in the past, and he is still with it enough to stand trial on this.
Yeah. And I do just want to correct myself, too, because I had mentioned that the psych eval was between March and May. I was wrong. It was October of 2019. But I will spoil something for you. The judge did say that he wants him evaluated every 12 months.
Yeah.
So there's always the potential.
Well, if it was 2019, I mean, it's time for another evaluation.
Yeah, but that article was just... So he had his evaluation. That was it. Nobody seemed to fight it. It was like, okay, he's not competent. But now, because he was just named a suspect like 3 weeks ago, the DA is like, I want another cognitive exam or whatever. Like, I want you to test him again.
Right.
And the judge is like, no. But now he agreed that he has to be tested every 12 months.
Okay,
so
probably starting now, I would hope then.
Yeah, I would hope so, but...
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that if he was evaluated in 2019 prior to being named a suspect, the prosecution now should have every right to perform another evaluation now that he is being named a suspect in another criminal case of potential murder.
Yeah.
So I don't know how a judge can be like, oh, no, I'm not going to let that go.
Well, so it says, quote, Judge Scott Evans said he will not reconsider his May 27th decision that prompted the release of Mark Eugene Warfell to a hospital while he awaits more permanent placement, end quote. May 27th was the day that it was released that he was a suspect in the case, and this was at a competency hearing for him. And
to see if he could get moved to a hospital out of prison.
Correct. And that's when authorities said, we're naming him a suspect. So I think that probably pushed them to release it publicly too, to say like, we need to get somewhere with this guy. Like, he is a suspect in our case. Like, fine, we'll just tell him, like, so we can hopefully figure something out.
Yeah, so that judge, though, may be referring to his decision to, not reversing his decision to allow him to be remanded to a hospital. He might not be saying, no, I'm not going to let you do an evaluation. He's just saying, yeah, I'm not going to keep him in jail. I'm going to send him to a hospital based on that 2019 evaluation, but I will let you do a new evaluation, and we'll do an evaluation every 12 months.
Yeah, but then it says, quote, but Evans was not swayed. He wrote in his ruling last week that the prosecution waived their right to examine Warfell, end quote.
That's stupid.
So I don't know.
The prosecution in Tracy's case?
Yeah. So I don't know all the specifics of that. There's like a lot of legal mumbo jumbo that I am totally not good with, but
I'll have to look into it, and we'll keep an eye on it over the coming weeks.
Oh, 100%. Like, everybody listening, I have my Google alerts all set up. Like, honestly, I finished writing this, was ready to record it literally 3 days ago, and then that new article came out, and I was like, WTF, what is going on with my life? There's more every single day. So this is where we're at up to June 16th, 2022. So anything that comes out after, we will absolutely update on our socials and our website. With that being said, it kind of brings us to theories. And based on the insane amount of information I've given you, there are certainly quite a few possible scenarios and several people that could have involvement here. To make it simple, I think we should just kind of review person by person, because there seems to be a lack of connections here. You have the boyfriend, who I don't think is involved in any way, shape, or form. I think that was just the rumor mill being the rumor mill because nobody had information. Mm-hmm. But then you have Holly in that whole situation. And then you have Matthew Webster, who allegedly said that he was involved. But now you have Mark Warfell, who's supposedly the biological father of Kimberly, who knew Tracy, and you have him now officially being named as a suspect.
You also have Thomas Stewart.
I don't think Thomas Stewart's involved.
Hey, I'm just saying.
True, yeah.
That was brought up and that was looked into.
Yeah.
And there was the connection with the business owner saying there were two vans in the area, that the rumor was that there were two vans in the area. Mm-hmm. Thomas Stewart has two vans, but again, if this was all made public knowledge, it could have just been some asshole.
But Mark Warfell ran an auto body shop. Maybe he had a van.
Yeah, very true.
So that's possible.
Or access to one, at least.
Yeah, I think, so there are a few things.
Well, let's start with the boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the boyfriend was looked into, probably at some point early on. There were rumors or whatever. Nothing was really said by authorities, but it seems like they've ruled him out.
Yes, especially if they're naming somebody else as a suspect.
Right. And then you had Thomas Stewart, which could have been a bogus tip, just because a lot of the stuff that came forward from that tip was already public knowledge.
Yep.
Okay, so we can rule those two out already. Mm-hmm. Now we have Holly.
Yep. So the thing that I think is strange, I don't think she has any involvement. I think that maybe she knew Matthew in whatever way, shape, or form that was, who knows, because she would have been like 13 years old. She was 44 when she was arrested. So she would have been like literally 13 or 14 when Tracy was supposedly killed. So either she was an absolutely insane, practically prepubescent, or
Oh, as far as her being
wasn't
involved in the murder.
Yes, I don't think she was involved in any sort of potential murder that could have happened. And I don't honestly know any sort of connection that she had with either Warfell or Matthew Webster now or back then.
Unless it just hasn't been released and they had some type of romantic relationship nowadays.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how old Webster is.
A little bit older, but not.
So 15, 16, 17?
Yeah, around her age. He said he was with his buddies. Right.
And it was supposed to be a rape and that's it.
Yeah.
And then it turned into more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only way Holly is connected here is obviously to Webster.
Yep.
Who knows if Webster is the guy that killed her and threw her down a mine shaft that Warfell was talking about.
Yeah.
So the only two people out of everyone that we talked about that really have a stronger connection to being involved in a negative light would be Webster.
Yep.
Who already went to prison on perjury charges.
Yep.
But was never charged or named a suspect.
Oh, and I will say, he posted on a Facebook comment, like there was like this, I don't know, whether it was the state police or someone posted about Tracy's case on Facebook. There were like almost 200 comments on it, and he was like responding to people. And he was saying that Holly just flat out lied. He never said those things.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's what you would say if you did. You didn't want to be found out.
Of course, yeah. So I'm just saying, like, he was like talking to people and being like, I didn't do that, I didn't say that. So I don't know if he's just trying to cover his ass or...
Yeah, I mean, I always say that your best option is to stay removed from things like that. Don't even make any comments because everything on the internet is permanent. You can always find stuff that was on the internet at a later time. So you don't want to say something that could really fuck you over later on.
Absolutely.
I would say that he is on the back burner.
I agree.
Maybe the back burner. Because that is a weird thing for Holly to come forward and say that, he was drunk right after they searched his property and that he admitted to it. So I would say back burner.
I just want to know his connection with Mark, though. I wonder if there's a connection there and there's something going on and, like, he feels bad for something he did and then Mark got involved some way and, like, helped him dispose of the body or something. Like, I feel like there could be a connection there. Like,
could he have been an employee of the auto body place?
Hey, maybe.
Could he have gotten work done there before? Did they frequent the same bars? Stuff like that. So there could be some type of connection there.
Yeah.
But Warfell is the only one that's named a suspect.
Exactly, and that holds so much weight.
And that's where we have to end on that, is we have a suspect named after 33 years?
Yeah.
33 years now. And I mean, they could have put the heat on Webster while he was in prison for the perjury charge.
For sure, yeah.
But he ended up getting out based on time served.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I'm interested to see what happens with Warfell. I want to see what happens with the new evaluation, which definitely should be done. Because what's the problem with doing that? He is now a suspect in a new case. His last evaluation was done 3 years ago.
But if they
and he's acting like a little horn dog too at the fucking hospital with all the nurses and stuff.
But that just goes to show his dementia even more, like based on what that psychologist said. So like you can look at it from both sides.
Right, but is that the only thing that the dementia is causing, is a lack of inhibition and he's acting out because of it? Is he still competent enough to give answers and shit like that?
Hey, 3 years ago he wasn't, so who knows now?
Well, it depends. I think evaluations,
2.5 years, but
as we've seen with recent celebrity cases, evaluations are subjective.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can go see 3 different psychologists and you can get 3 different answers.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I personally think there's a lot of things that just make him seem really sketchy to me. I mean, we talked about the burn shed. That could be a red herring. It could mean something. Who knows? It's weird. But then you look at the fact that Tracy and her dad went to his auto body shop. You look at the fact that Kimberly went to prison to question him and in some way knew or had the wherewithal to know to ask that he was her biological father. And then he's supposedly also
knows about somebody, he knows who did or that somebody else did kill Tracy and dumped her down a mine shaft.
Yeah, so he's giving some sort of answer to it, even if it may not be the full truth. But then he's looked at in the death of his wife. He's potentially involved in other sexual assaults. I mean, so then if you look at the sexual assault, you look at Kimberly, you look at why would she be asking if you are my biological father? What other reason could you think of other than...
outside of an affair.
Yeah, which, I mean, I don't know anything about that. None of that has been stated.
Right.
So I just...
Could her mother have been raped and just kept it a secret?
Yeah, and Kimberly was the last child.
Yeah, never said anything about it because she didn't want to upset her husband, too. And then just raise the child as their own.
Yeah.
So...
it's sketchy.
it's all going to come down to if they get the right psychologist, I guess.
Yeah, honestly. And that's it. That's all we've got at this point. And articles are coming out left and right. It seems like this is really in the news right now. People are talking about it a lot, and we'll definitely keep everybody updated on where things go. At the end of the day, Tracy deserves justice. Her family deserves to give her a proper burial. But many of the answers in this case may remain locked in the deteriorating mind of Mark Warfell. And unless he's deemed competent enough to stand trial, they may be locked in there forever. Unless, as we state so often, there's somebody else that knows what he knows. And if all else fails, perhaps they can come forward 3 decades later and help bring closure to the Kroh family. If you know who killed Tracy Kroh or know where her remains might be, please contact the Troop H Criminal Investigation Assessment Unit at 717-671-7534, or you can anonymously contact the Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers toll-free at 1-800-472-8477. Thank you all so much for tuning in every week. We're so happy to have you here. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review before you go and follow us on our socials.
You can follow us on Instagram at wicked.deeds.podcast and on Twitter at wickeddeeds. Don't forget to visit our website, wickeddeedspodcast.com, to take a look at any photos from this episode and view our source material.
But most importantly, tune in next week for an all-new episode.